On removing Cuba from the U.S. list of state terrorism sponsors. Cuba is just one of 4 nations on the list, a big sticking point as Washington and Havana look to renew ties. The president is expected to quickly formalize removing Cuba once he gets a recommendation from government agencies, whom he says are now going over a State Department review.
I won't make a formal announcement today about what those recommendations are. I'll wait until I've received them.
The president's move could come as soon as this week when he will be at a regional summit in Panama with Cuban leader Raul Castro. The fatal shooting of a black man by a white South Carolina police officer is bringing another investigation of an earlier case in which the same officer was accused of excessive force. Michael Slager had been cleared of any wrongdoing in a 2013 case involving his use of a taser against another unarmed black man. Witnesses say investigators never contacted them as part of the investigation. The Foundation for Individual Rights in Education, or FIRE, has released an updated second edition of its Guide to Due Process and Campus Justice.
The original guide was released in 2003. This revised version is much larger and was edited by FIRE's Vice President of Legal and Public Advocacy, Will Creeley, who says FIRE realized there was a need.
We thought that enough time had passed and a new generation of students at our nation's college campuses could use a guide to navigating their college's disciplinary proceedings to ensure fundamentally fair practice.
He says there's also a definite need for guidance concerning the increase in sexual misconduct and abuse charges being brought up on campuses across the nation.
Students are very often failed by college judicial processes for sexual assault cases, and I should say on both the side of the accuser and the accused. It's a broken system, but we want to make sure that everybody has as much right to a fair hearing as possible.
FIRE has made the guide available as a free download on their website at thefire.org. Also, educators, students, and student groups may request copies in bulk by contacting FIRE. I'm Bob Kellogg.
Georgia lawmakers have not seen the last of the proposed Religious Freedom Restoration Act. AFN's Charlie Butts reports the bill was tabled in the House.
The bill is designed to prevent state and local governments from passing laws that infringe on the religious rights of people. Government would have to have a compelling interest to do so. Mike Griffin, field director for Georgia Right to Life, tells AFN it was like a buzzsaw cutting the bill to pieces.
And once again, the LGBT activists have taken RFRA hostage and made a lot of demands. And unfortunately, the media is more than willing to be the megaphone.
100 days, 100 subscribers at $7 will bring FirstAmendmentRadio.com to the minimum level necessary to sustain it through 2015. Go to support.FirstAmendmentRadio.com. $7 a month. Really, you can afford that for our Protestant First Amendment rights and the gospel of the kingdom message. Where your heart is, there will your treasure be also. Go to support.FirstAmendmentRadio.com.
Hear it first on FirstAmendmentRadio.com and FirstAmendmentRadio.net.
And we're back with the second hour of the Free America here on the American Freedom Network. And we need your help. It's simple as that. We need your help. Keep the lights on, phone bill paid, buy more squirrel food, time to buy new shoes for the squirrel, just all kinds of stuff. We need your help. Call Michael, 800-205-6245, 800-205-6245. You can make a pledge on your plastic. You can order a copy of today's show or past shows we've done, other shows here on the network. That helps us out. You can pick up that envelope and address it to AHNC, P.O. Box 1750, P.O. Box 1750, Johnstown, Colorado, Federal Occupation Zone 80534. Your check, your money order, much appreciated. We'll even still take the fraudulent reserve notes. Other currencies, sure, throw them in if you got them. You could throw in some just weights and measures, the Lord's of money. At the very least, tell your friends and family, tune in 1360 AM on the Internet at America News Net, and call the advertisers, folks. It only takes a second. Jot their number down. Give them a call. Square Root Construction, Doug Lambert, he's helping us out, keep the show on the air. SquareRootConstruction.com is the website. Give Doug a call if you need that 8x16 storage shed in the backyard when the in-laws show up. 303-517-8742. 303-517-8742. Give Doug a call and say thank you. My guest today, Randy Cook, president of NORM, National Organization for Raw Materials. NormEconomics.org is the website. NormEconomics.org. Question, comment, phone lines are open, 877-254-7524. I demand an honest money system. That should be the message, folks. I demand an honest money system.
That'd be a good one.
And the way to do that, you don't have to be up on all of this. You don't have to be an economist. Go to the NORM website, normeconomics.org. Upper left-hand corner, punch on the new stuff. Scroll down the page a little ways, and there's the National Economic Stability Act. Put that into the hands of your, state legislators.
Mm-hmm.
Put it into the hands of your county commissioners. Put it into the hands of your federal reps. And just simply say, I demand an honest money system, and here's how you do it. And we have a caller. Who we got?
Hey, Randy.
Hey, Jim.
I wanted to ask Randy Cook if he would mind repeating what the farmer gets for a pound of beef. And I thought that you said 63 cents?
No. I said the parity ratio is 37, which means that the farmer gives away 63 cents on every dollar that he receives for what he produces.
So the parity ratio is 37?
Yes. Huh? Yep, 37%. Yep.
Percent, okay.
That's agriculture as a whole in the United States. That's everything. That's crops, that's livestock, that's fisheries. I think there's some forest products in there, although the way the original parity ratio is calculated, the one that's based in 1910 to 14 as the base period, that one does not include forest products.
Mm-hmm. And he gives away 63 cents per, what is that?
Per dollar.
Well,
he
doesn't give it away. It's just that's all that he is able to receive at the marketplace.
That's all. You're right. That's correct. It never gets paid. He doesn't get it. This is the difficulty. It never comes into circulation through the earnings of agriculture. And so because it's never paid into circulation, it has to be borrowed into circulation by somebody else somewhere along the economic line in order to make those products process, distribute, and consume. It takes that much money to produce, process, distribute, and consume all of the parts and pieces of our standard of living. That's the income equation that we're talking about.
Okay, well, thank you, and I'll let you get on with the fraudulent reserve system we have.
Well, it's a curiosity, isn't it?
And part of the National Economic Stability Act, is part of that in there, is the clause in there that the U.S. Treasury will start issuing the United States money.
United States
notes. And so for every United States note issued, we retire one of the fraudulent reserve notes.
Right.
So pretty soon, because they're going to say, that'll cause massive inflation. Well, no. As we replace our currency over time with United States money, United States notes, the federal fraudulent reserve notes get, you can put them in your wood stove and heat your house.
Well, that in fact is what the U.S. Treasury does what the Treasury tells the Federal Reserve to do when they try to reduce the amount of money in circulation.
Yes.
They just take bunches of it, old stuff, in fact, mix it in with some newer stuff and put it through an incinerator.
Are you saying, Randy, that for every new Federal Reserve note they print, that they shred the old one?
No.
Okay, nope.
No. I'm saying that if we want to put this plan together that we're talking about here, the National Economic Stability, what happens is parity pricing is paid at the first point of sale for all of the raw material producers. That's the miners, the lumber, the fishery, the agriculture, recycling.
Well, the Economic Stability Act only talks about agriculture.
Right.
That doesn't talk about mining or oil.
But we can add all of that. Did I confuse you, Jim?
Well, talk more about this and try and bring it out.
We'll be right back. Stay here on the American Freedom Network.
It's Ram Truck.
Years ahead of the dominant media, FirstAmendmentRadio.com and FirstAmendmentRadio.net. The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening.
You're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com worldwide. Freedom is never free. We need your support today at FirstAmendmentRadio.com.
And of NORM, National Organization for Raw Materials, normeconomics.org. Normeconomics.org is the website. Jim drop off? Jim dropped off. You were going to elucidate on
the income equation is really what we were talking about there. In other words, our standard of living, all the stuff we buy each day, each week, each month, each year, it takes a certain amount of raw materials. It takes a certain amount of food, takes a certain amount of housing, a certain amount of clothes, shoes, fuel for our cars, tires, oil, windshield washer juice, wiper blades, all the stuff. And the tools that we use to make all that stuff need to be repaired and replaced and kept up to date, or purchased new, or replaced with a better tool. Our roads need repairing. We need to build more homes. All of this stuff is part of our standard of living. And each year in this country, with essentially knowing approximately or pretty close what our population is and how many calories we need to live a good life and have enough energy left over at the end of the day to go see a movie or to play some music with our family or friends or sit outside on the porch and enjoy a cool beverage. You know, all of these things are parts of our standard of living, and so it takes a certain amount of stuff to make those things appear for people to be able to obtain them. And so that raw material production that we use to create all those elements, all those parts and pieces of our standard of living, have to be processed from their natural state, their raw state. They have to be distributed. They have to be purchased and transported home and consumed. And that all takes a certain amount of dollars, which is the currency or the money that we use here in the United States. It's been there since the 1792 Coinage Act. We can come pretty close to knowing how much money it takes to do all that stuff. I mean, that's the point to acquiring and assembling the statistical record of the United States, and that's where Carl Wilkins started. And he said, let's understand how the money rolls through this economy in order to provide, process, distribute, and consume the stuff that we have to make good lives, good families, and provide for the next generation. And so he went through the record of the United States, the statistics, and what he saw in these statistics was that there was a relationship between the national income, which is the income that's earned in the production of the things we use in this country each year, and the gross raw material income. In other words, there was a relationship that always prevailed. When the prices, and knowing that the raw material prices are calculated, just as I said earlier, on the quantity times the price. If you produce 100 bushels of wheat at $1 and you sell it, that's $100. If you produce 100 bushels of wheat and sell it at 50 cents on the dollar, there's $50. Or there's no, if it takes $100 on that for that wheat to get processed and distributed and consumed, then you haven't got enough money when you're paying 50 cents. You do have when you're paying $1. And that's all we're talking about. We're saying that the price of raw materials at the first point of sale has to be in balance with the cost of labor and money, capital, the interest rates, essentially, in the rest of the economy in order for the equation to come out so that we have enough money to make all that stuff happen without the need for more debt. In other words, there's a point at which we have money sufficient in circulation to produce, process, distribute, and consume all the stuff that 300 and some odd million people in this country require for a good life.
But Randy, there's no money left over for speculation.
Thank God. Oh, I mean, that would be just awful for the speculators.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, let's find them something useful to do besides ruining everybody else's money.
Let's do a little line on speculation.
Okay.
The speculation is, I'm going to speculate here that dollar for the bushel of wheat is, well, if things are right and the crystal ball is there, and I'm in the marketplace because let's see, I'm going to speculate that I'm going to bet.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to place a bet that dollar a bushel wheat goes down to 50 cents.
Right. Right. I'll bet $2 that it'll go down to 50 cents in the next 3 months.
Okay. Here we go.
Right.
And that's what they're doing.
That's exactly what the futures market is. Right.
Yeah, and the other guy over there on the cross room says, no, I'm going to bet it goes up to $1.10.
Mm-hmm. Right. I'll bet $1 that it goes up to $1.10, goes up 10 cents in the next 2 months.
Right.
Or the next 3 days, or whatever it might be. Yep. And fortunes are made and lost in hours or sometimes minutes on such wagers, such bets. And what's failed to be understood here is that such activity uses money that people don't have. In other words, the guys making the bet don't have the money to buy the contracts at the given price. They borrow the money to take a position on the contracts called margins, and that's all they require to get into the marketplace. Of course, they have to be accepted as participants in the market, and they've got rules and all that kind of stuff, but shoot, once you're in there, who cares? As long as you've got a line of credit that you can borrow against somebody else that says you can go in there and buy and sell contract margins or contract options or puts and calls or all kinds of other hedging mechanisms that have evolved over the years, and then we'll put, we see so much gyration in the prices going on that we have to put limitations for each day's trading. It can only move so many cents in one direction or the other. And, oh, golly gosh, so, we recognize that there are problems when this sort of behavior is allowed to happen. And so we try to minimize it. We try to narrow it or focus it and try and corral it somehow so that it doesn't do too much damage. When the curiosity is that when we actually operated under the parity plan from 1942 to 52, by adopting the policy that we're talking about in the National Economic Stability Act, during World War II, the futures markets closed in the United States for agricultural commodities. The futures markets closed. They were not declared closed. They were not forced closed by the government. But there was nothing for them to do because the prices were published monthly, calculated by arithmetic, and published by the USDA. And what happened was that the Commodity Credit Corporation showed up for the basic storable commodities, wheat and barley and cotton and corn, and because there wasn't much in the soybeans only started being grown in this country in the late 30s, so there wasn't much in the way of soybeans in World War II, but oats and barley and corn and wheat and cotton were the five major commodities. They were the bulk commodities, and what would happen was that if you grew wheat, for example, and you took your wheat to the elevator to sell it in July, which is where at least in where I live, that's when wheat gets harvested. I would go into the elevator, and the elevator operator would be sitting there and say, "Well, I'll give you $2 a bushel." And the commodity credit man would be sitting right beside him, essentially, because, well, he didn't have to be there. All they have to do is write on the board what the parity price of wheat was. And the Commodity Credit Corporation had a standing offer to loan you money on the crop you have in your truck at 90% of the parity price. And so if the elevator operator wanted to own any of the wheat so that he could sell it to a miller or save it for a future value, thinking that the price might go up a little, he would have to at least offer as much as the commodity credit loan was. So in other words, by the Commodity Credit Corporation offering a 90% parity non-recourse loan, which means that the crop is the only collateral that cannot, if you take the loan and don't pay it back, then you have to, you can't lose your house. All they can do is take the commodity.
Right. It was a non-interest-bearing loan.
Oh, no, or interest. It didn't have to be, but I think it did. Oh. But nonetheless, what it served to do was to put price floor onto the market. Now, the provisions were that the loan came due and payable when the price in the marketplace hit 100% of parity. So you could get a loan at 90% of that parity price, and when the price in the marketplace hits 100% of the parity, you had to pay that loan back. In other words, you had to liquidate your position.
Right.
You had to sell your crop money, and you paid the Commodity Credit Corporation loan off. And that was the way it ran.
And that was the way it ran. Now,
that put earned money into circulation in the farmer's pocket.
Which he then in turn paid his help, and he in turn bought, well, new equipment.
Tools, equipment, supplies, food, house necessities, whatever his wife needs to run the farm. That's right. Paid off his loans, whatever he might have loaned, because he didn't have the money in May and he needed fuel. Then maybe he got fuel delivered to him and said, I'll pay in July when I get my wheat check. And the guy with the fuel said, okay, you'll sign a note on that. And, okay, you'd sign your note. And then when you get your income, when your money comes through from the sale of the wheat, then you could pay off your bills. And hopefully, at 90% of parity on the loan, if that was all you got, then you were able to have some savings. Many farmers in the 40s, up until 1950 through 1952, purchased land, bought new pickup trucks with 1 year's production. That was the price balance. That was how it worked. That's why we say what you've been saying here is that it didn't enrich the bankers. You know, people were self-financing. They weren't rich, but there was enough money in circulation, earned money. The net interest charges were low enough, and the earnings were sufficient that the money that was in circulation was sufficient to circulate the production, process the production, distribute the production, consume the production without the need for more capital debt.
And pay all the people in between.
That's right. That's what it does. It pays the people in between. That was what they noticed, was the relationship between national income and gross raw material income. And they refined it later to identify gross agricultural income, which is a component of gross raw material income. That, in other words, there was a relationship, a ratio between gross raw material income and national income. And at that time, it was 5 to 1. For every $1 earned by raw material producers, $5 of national income was produced. Now, because agriculture was 70% of that raw material production, if you divide 5 by 0.7, you come up with 7.2 or something like that. I forget what it is. Anyway, 7.1. The ratio, therefore, from agriculture being 70% of the raw material production to national income is 1 to 7.
877-254-7584. Questions, comments, phone messages.
I pledge allegiance to the King of Kings and to his kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. One holy nation and our Heavenly Father, grace, mercy, justice for all.
I know you all want answers, and believe me, so do I, and I'll do my best to get them.
Have you seen the Left Behind movies? Have you read the Left Behind fictional book series? Not everyone believes Left Behind is true prophecy. Some may even regard as conspiratorial the mainstream re-release of the Left Behind movie with actor Nicolas Cage portraying the main character as an attempt to further reinforce in the minds of all this perception of false prophecy in order to condition the masses for the play about to begin. Because they see the world stage shaping to fulfill what they have been led to believe is sound biblical interpretation, a Left Behind rapture scenario. This false view of prophecy is reinforced in the mind, not only of its adherents, but also includes those who have been merely exposed to the specific media. Is it possible that false prophecy can be fulfilled? The rapture theories have always been in dispute. Pre-trib, mid-trib, and post-trib disputes have risen up in exclusively evangelical circles of recent history, so that when true believers don't suddenly disappear, this element will easily go by the wayside when all see a new Jewish temple begin to be built. Will this be part of the great delusion that will come upon the whole earth? It seems that this great prophetic delusion has already overcome practically the entire American evangelical and Christian world. Get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. To learn more, visit crosstheborder.org. That's CROSS, crosstheborder.org.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity, invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host, Melody Cedarstrom, right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit DiscountGoldandSilverTrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free, 1-800-375-4188.
You're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com worldwide. Freedom is never free. We need your support today at FirstAmendmentRadio.com.
Economics.org. NormEconomics.org. We've got a couple callers online. Who we got first? Hello, caller.
Hey, Randy, this is Dan.
Hello, Dan.
Hi, Randy. So, just a scenario for Mr. Cook. In a perfect world, I totally understand the need for self-financing and the way that works. But where I see the problem coming in is if Farmer Jones doesn't produce a crop and the gas man and the auto dealer and everybody else is out their money, enter the banker who's willing to take on the risk. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, I guess the question becomes what you know about farming and how many farmers are going to decide not to produce a crop. Most of the times that I know of when a farmer winds up without any income is when there's a crop failure. Not widespread, but at least on his place. I had one myself here in 2008. I raised blueberries and I had usually my berry season starts in July, and on the 2nd of July I had a hailstorm here that put all of my crop on the ground, and I was without income that year. And so only because I had enough savings put by was I able to get through that year, through until the next harvest in the following July of 2009. So I don't know really what your intent on the scenario is to say that there's no production, unless that's the situation you're talking about. Is that correct or
that's
not?
Part of the situation. I mean, I think really my whole question is about managing risk, right? So let's say I raise alfalfa, and the weevil comes in and wipes out half the crop, and I'm still in a situation where I've promised out more alfalfa than I'm taking in a given year.
Right.
How is it that I manage that risk? And that's where I think the banker comes in, and ultimately I think this is where community financing falls apart, is because too many people get affected by any one person's failure, whether it be of their own accord or not. And I'm not calling to be argumentative. I'm just saying that if we're gonna present an argument, we need to make sure we patch all the holes.
Well, no, I understand exactly what you're saying. I think I do anyway. My contention here is that the original risk is the farmers in trying to put that seeding in the ground and get it up and being able to assess how much production he may have. Now, if he has sold his production in anticipation, then he should be holding that money pending delivery of the product. And so that risk is covered there to some degree. But at that point, you have to renegotiate with the folks who are expecting that hay to show up on their place and come to some agreement, either with future satisfying it out of future production in a following year or some adjustment on the price. But as far as the risk goes, the money involved, as far as a banker trying to step in and cover the loss of hay with some supply of money, really doesn't make any sense unless the horses or the cattle or whoever's going to eat the hay can eat the money instead.
Agreed.
Yeah. Now, there also, you could, under the scenario, you could still have crop insurance. You can still have crop insurance for a devastation like that.
Well, and in fact, the community's development of the proper pricing characteristic, being able to calculate it by the mathematics, is actually the insurance policy, because it produces prosperity in the community, not just on the farm. And so the community itself is then better equipped to deal with shortages or crop failures or even overproduction of certain crops in any given year. It becomes a community source of insurance rather than a private company or an individual banker having to step in and fill the breach, much like J.P. Morgan did in 1907. He personally stepped in and guaranteed the solvency of the federal government from his own vault in 1907 because of a panic that occurred, money panic from Wall Street.
Just a quick note on insurance. I think that many of the listeners of this program would understand that the best insurance you can have is that you are somehow productive yourself, whether it be you have a trade that no one else has or raising something that you can barter in return, because I think it's all obvious to most of the listeners to this program that the fiat money system is doomed from the start, just a matter of time. And really appreciate you guys. Thanks, Randy. Thanks, Randy, for your show.
Well, thanks, Dan. I appreciate the question because it's a very important point. The prosperity of the community is the best insurance against hard times.
Indeed.
And you're quite right, because money is not wealth, wealth is not money, and people live on wealth, not money.
That's correct. And the sooner that we can educate our kids on the definition of wealth, the better off we'll be, assuming that they can even understand those concepts anymore.
It's a tough one.
Coming out.
Yeah, it's a tough concept to deliver because most adults don't want to spend any time trying to figure that out.
Yep. Thanks, guys.
Hey, Dan. Thanks for calling. Thanks for listening. We've got Benny Pope online.
Hey, guys.
Hey, Randy and Randy.
Hey,
how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm good. Just a comment on the show. We've been talking about parity, and Randy, we've all been talking to consumer groups and commodity groups and farmers about parity for congressmen and senators for 40 years now, it seems like.
Right.
And nobody understands the whole concept. But I think that right now we're headed towards parity. It's just not going to be based on our cost of production over here, our cost of doing manufacturing or farming or, like Dan was saying, raising alfalfa. It's going to be based on world cost of production and world wages.
Right.
That's where we've been heading now for the last many decades.
Yeah.
I mean, do you agree? Do you agree with what I'm saying?
Well, I think that what you're observing is correct, but the difficulty is that the domestic cost structure in the United States cannot survive, cannot generate prosperity
on a foreign wage rate. You're absolutely right.
Well, sure it can. Sure it can. We can all live in a cardboard tin shack.
That's what it requires.
Do it, Vinny.
But we'll be right back.
Hear it first on FirstAmendmentRadio.com and FirstAmendmentRadio.net. The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening. Years ahead of the dominant media, FirstAmendmentRadio.com and FirstAmendmentRadio.net.
And we're back. After adjusting for inflation, median household income has fallen by nearly $5,000 since 2007. According to the New York Times, the typical American household is now worth 36% less than it was worth a decade ago. 47% of all Americans do not put a single penny out of their paychecks into savings. One survey found that 62% of all Americans are currently living paycheck to paycheck. It doesn't have to be that way. Benny Pope from Lubbock, Texas, online. Benny, we've been talking about parity and raw material economics for 40 years, and we just have to keep shouting it from the rooftop until it sinks in a little. And the more people that get a little bit of a grasp on this, when this system comes tumbling down, it's going to be you folks out there that have listened to these programs and you went to the website, normeconomics.org. It's going to be you that will be able to stand up in the town hall meeting and say, here's a plan that worked really well in the past. We can institute it again.
Right. Right here locally.
Right.
That's right. And really all it is the statement of the golden rule is treating others as you would have them treat you. I mean, it's a way to treat each other on an equal terms basis. In other words, my dollar is worth no more or no less than your dollar. And instead of, like today, where the farmer's dollar is worth 37 cents and the banker's dollar is worth $4 or $40. You know, that's the leverage ratio. If you talk about leverage ratios in borrowing, MF Global, the John Corzine's
investment firm that went broke. That was leveraged out to 40 to 1, which meant every dollar they had invested, they claimed $40 worth of value. Well, if the farmer's getting 40 cents on the dollar and Corzine's getting $40 on the dollar, that's a 100 to 1 ratio of mistreatment between farmers and bankers and speculators.
You think he'd swap?
Say again?
You think he'd swap positions with us?
I don't think so.
Well, here, let me just say this, and if there's somebody else jumps on. At the World Economic Forum this year, 2015, in Davos, Switzerland, the title of the working group there was Ending Poverty to Parity. Really. But if you look behind the scenes at what they were really saying, because they always try to use all this nice flowery language to get people involved, and they have a consensus already established before anybody gets there.
Right.
But it's essentially what you said at the coming into the break, Randy. They're wanting to drive all wages down to poverty level.
Sure.
So that they can announce at that point there's no more poverty because we're all living this way.
Right. That's right.
Except us here in Devon.
Right.
Well, the statistics you read about the family income, that should be staggering to anybody, that we see such a decline in family income now. And we see so many families, I know we do here locally, working with the food banks here locally, we see so many families that are not traditional clients of the food bank anymore. These folks are working, sometimes 2 and 3 jobs, just like you said earlier, Randy Arbro.
Yep.
And they can't make ends meet.
That's right.
And so, the working class poor that are working really hard have no place else to go.
No, that's right. They're at the end of the rope. It's not a... it's engineered, essentially. The collapse, even the oil price decline here is getting some people's attention because it's becoming clear that there's a two-edged sword here. In other words, cheap gas is nice and a boon to a private person's own budget, but because it's driving down the profitability of the oil companies, there are fewer barrels pumped out of the ground.
Yes.
And so we see this whipsaw effort, this double-edged sword thing going on, which is good. I'm glad people are seeing that because that's exactly what we've been talking about for years, is that what our point here is that, again, we're talking about that right price, that proper price, that parity price, that is the balance point with the first point of sale and the cost of labor and capital and the rest of the economy. And so the last time I calculated the oil parity was around $66, $67 a barrel. And which is some of the markets are coming back pretty close to that. They're around 54, 55. I think one of them was at 58 the other day. So I don't know. They may wind up at that point eventually. Who knows? But their whole worldwide scheme here is always going to be focused on maintaining their monetary advantage, whether it's in driving the United States and Germany as the leading economies in the world, or even China, which may get there eventually, to poverty levels, or whether they just want to maintain their world trade control. That's what everything has to serve these days. The domestic agriculture policy is maintained the way it is simply to ensure the dominance of the World Trade Organization. I mean, that's what our policy reflects.
Yes.
it's not based upon good economics for the people of this country or any other country.
Stay with us, Benny. We'll be right back. Finishing off this show here on the American Freedom Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Tom Phillips.
You're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com worldwide. Freedom is never free. We need your support today at FirstAmendmentRadio.com.
Gold and silver is tremendously undervalued. Global demand vastly exceeds mine supply by more than 60% annually. There is little in the financial world more certain than a coming explosion in the prices of gold and silver. The U.S. dollar continues to lose value and respect as the world's reserve currency. Our nation faces challenges on many fronts, and a day doesn't pass without another economist bringing forth warnings of impending economic calamity. There has never been a better time than right now to acquire physical gold and silver. Discount Gold and Silver Trading was founded on the principles of truth and honesty. We believe in providing a quality product, quality service, and most importantly, competitive pricing. We provide all forms of precious metals, including American gold, silver, platinum, and rare investment and circulated coins. Silver bars, rounds, and 90% silver bags are on hand for the silver investor. Gold self-directed IRAs are available. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free, that's 1-800-375-4188. If you'd like to get a copy of this program, you may subscribe at FirstAmendmentRadio.com for only $45 a month, and you'll receive an MP3 CD weekly of all of our programs. As a bonus, we'll send you a password for our audio archives online. That's a $15 value. Or you may request any month of any program on one MP3 CD for a minimum donation of only $25, or any single program on tape, MP3 CD, or CD for only $15. You may do all of this online at FirstAmendmentRadio.com. Just follow the instructions to make a donation or subscribe. You may also adopt an hour of your favorite program. Please don't forget that most of the programs on FirstAmendmentRadio.com are listener-supported. Don't do Internet? Then call 559-781-3773 and we'll be honored to help you. Thank you from all of us here at FirstAmendmentRadio.com.
You're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com worldwide. Freedom is never free. We need your support today at FirstAmendmentRadio.com.
Economics.org. NormEconomics.org. We got Benny Pope on with us from Lubbock, Texas. Benny, you need to get Randy on your radio show.
Well, yes, we sure do. It's time to do that down here because, Randy, you mentioned that we still grow cotton here in the U.S., but that's not going to be for much longer, I'm afraid. Cotton is no longer a Tier 1 program crop, and our farmers down here, I live out in the biggest cotton package in the world, right, and our farmers down here are unable to get financing to grow cotton right now without pledging a tubload of unencumbered assets to get a loan. I'll be darned. Many people who don't need a loan but are self-financed are not planning on growing anything this year because of the low prices. Right. Okay. And I know our friend Cliff Harris of LongRangeWeather.com just came out today and said that many of his clients and others are not planning on planting anything this year because if they do, they're just going to go broke trying to grow it because of the low prices. Correct. Yep.
Now,
now we're seeing the other side of this, though. John Deere is cutting back. Case IH is cutting back. Those service groups that service them, like the Titan Wheel Manufacturing, that manufactures all the wheels for agriculture equipment, combines, anything that you need, it comes from them as far as wheels. They're fixing to announce massive layoffs, I'm told. Right. Yep, not surprising.
And just before we run out of time, National Economic Stability Act, this is not about making farmers rich, folks. In there, the minimum wage is tied to the parity price of wheat, and of December 2014, the price of a bushel of wheat was $18.50. minimum wage tied to $18.50. Do you think you can make it on that?
Right.
I had to throw that in there so you don't get confused. It's about you folks out there, you masses out there that are laboring to try and survive. And that's all we're basically coming down to, is being able to survive, not prosper. Yeah, I want my my corrugated tin shack, I want it painted bright purple.
At least on the eaves.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, the global trend of Agenda 21, which some people still laugh at, I'm sure, but it's here right now in the U.S., and I don't know of a country around the world where it's not being implemented. Right. And to have a tin shack probably would be a very nice thing.
Yes.
Under their agenda. So the problem is that we know these things are happening. We're having trouble of figuring out how to combat it. Mm-hmm. And I think that was what Dan was talking about when he was calling in. You know, he's going to teach his kids some trades that will be, good trades to have during the economic collapse.
Right. Yep. We're out of time. Benny, thanks for calling and listening. Randy Cook, thanks for being with us, and we're going to do it again over and over until it sinks in.
Okay, great, Randy.
Shabbat shalom, everyone, and remember, the question is not, do you know the Lord Jesus Christ? The question is, does he know you?
Ladies and gentlemen.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity, invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host, Melody Cedarstrom, right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit DiscountGoldandSilverTrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free, 1-800-375-4188. Years ahead of the dominant media, FirstAmendmentRadio.com and FirstAmendmentRadio.net.
American Family News, I'm Chris Woodward. The UN chief is demanding international action to head off a growing refugee crisis in Syria. Warren Levinson reports.
The UN Secretary General says the world has to act to head off an unfolding massacre at the Yarmouk refugee camp in Syria.
A refugee camp is beginning to resemble a death camp.
But Ban Ki-moon says he's made uneasy by plans to eject militants of the so-called Islamic State by force.
We should look at addressing this issue at the roots and try to establish an inclusive society.
An estimated 18,000 Syrians and Palestinians are trapped inside Yarmouk. After a 2-year government siege, IS fighters overran much of the camp last week.
President Obama says he is nearing a decision on removing Cuba from the U.S. list of state terrorism sponsors. Cuba is just one of 4 nations on the list, a big sticking point as Washington and Havana look to renew ties. The president is expected to quickly formalize removing Cuba once he gets a recommendation from government agencies, whom he says are now going over a State Department review.
I won't make a formal announcement today about what those recommendations are. I'll wait until I've received them.
The president's move could come as soon as this week, when he will be at a regional summit in Panama with Cuban leader Raul Castro. The fatal shooting of a black man by a white South Carolina police officer is bringing another investigation of an earlier case in which the same officer was accused of excessive force. Michael Slager had been cleared of any wrongdoing in a 2013 case. involving his use of a taser